Good evening, everybody. What an illustrious crowd we have gathered tonight for the 55th anniversary of the infamous Tet Offensive in Vietnam. We'll be talking with those who remember the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, and we'll also be having conversations with a lot of other people. We have some really interesting guests tonight, and I want to make sure that we get to all of it. So we want to get to it quickly. Sean Hall is spending his last few minutes before his paternity leave with us this evening. Sean, you are hours away from being the proud father of a son.
Yes, hours away. We got the first name, Isaac, down, so we are going to
You're not naming him Todd DiPastino Hall.
It was in the running. I was outvoted by the cat.
Right. I'm going to have to talk to Alicia about that.
Yeah. Yes, he is due at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning, and as you can imagine, the house is abuzz. Avi is running around feeding off of our crazy energy right now. So I'm here to say it's been a pleasure for 2023 so far with everybody here. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all in a month. I'll be back in the beginning of March. But super excited to share some photos of Isaac whenever he arrives tomorrow.
And we will share photos of Isaac too when he arrives. And take it easy. Enjoy the wonderful time with your family. I hope you started the restream.
I did. Restream has started.
Very good.
Everybody's in the room. You're good to go. But thank you guys all so much. I really look forward to talking with you all. Miss you guys. Have a great evening.
All right. I got it from here, Sean. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Good luck. Best wishes. Oh, how wonderful. So we look forward to hearing from Isaac or hearing from Sean about Isaac tomorrow. For those of you who are joining us for the first time or haven't joined us in a while, I'm Todd DiPastino. I am the executive director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and we're a nonprofit based in Pittsburgh that has been around since 2008, holding veteran storytelling programs. We get veterans together with the public, and we have veterans share their stories, and they could be happy stories, they could be sad stories, a lot of funny stories, and from all branches of service, all ages, all eras, all backgrounds. I'm not a veteran. I often feel I'm in the position of asking a lot of stupid questions. I ask the questions that, veterans would never ask themselves, because the military is its own unique subculture. And when you enter that subculture, it changes you for life, it turns out. So we have fascinating conversations. We want non-veterans to get involved in the conversations. We want students. We want older people, younger people. We're interested in hearing every kind of story, from every kind of background. We started doing these events online in 2020 because of the pandemic, and we've kept it up because it's been so wonderful. We get so fascinating people like Marty Johnson Jr., who's joining us tonight, a Navy chaplain. And we're going to get to him. We're going to get to the Tet Offensive. We got Fred Abate Marco joining us from New Jersey, Fred, right? New Jersey or... Oh, I'm sorry, I muted you. That was on me. Sorry about that.
Long Island, New York.
Long Island, New York. Okay, I knew it was around there. We have Mark Spear Digliosi. I'm getting all the names right tonight. Before I go on and before we get to our guests, we have Fred Christie, otherwise known as Sam Christie, Donut Dolly, who remembers the Tet Offensive, Ted Debiak. Oh, this is terrific. Before I go any further, I do want to acknowledge our sponsors, D&D Auto Salvage. They have re-upped their sponsorship, and we're very grateful to them. We're also planning some exciting events, including, it looks like, a Veterans Breakfast Club car cruise over the summer with them. And they are a state-of-the-art metal recycling and auto salvage facility. They have 2 locations in Western Pennsylvania, in Tarentum and Lawrenceville. You can find out their rates and more about what they do at dndautosalvage.com. That's dndautosalvage.com. We also, of course, were re-upped by Tobacco-Free Adagio Health. They're a nonprofit that look after the healthcare of women and children and families especially. And they have a special program that focuses on tobacco use. They want to decrease the amount of tobacco that is being used and harming people's health. And they educate people on the hazards of tobacco use. They advocate for healthier places to live, work, and play. And they also help people quit smoking and using tobacco. You can call their quit line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. You may ask, why would they sponsor the Veterans Breakfast Club? It's because you veterans smoke in bigger proportions than non-veterans do. So we want you to be around for a while. We want you to quit smoking if you can. You'll notice that everybody here in the Zoom room is muted. If you want to unmute, if you have a story to tell, if you have a question to ask, if you have a comment to make, you could raise your hand. And if you're using a laptop or a desktop computer and you're using the Zoom app, what you do is you go down here. Excuse me, I'm going to let people in from the waiting room here. They're piling up. Okay, what you could do is you go down to the bar down below and click reactions, raise hand. That'll signal to me. You'll go up to the top left of my screen. I'll see immediately that you have your hand raised, and I'll ask you to unmute. If you can't find the raise hand, that may be because you're on an iPad or some other kind of tablet. And there you go to the upper right-hand corner where it says participants. Click that and you'll see raise hand down here. You click that, that'll allow you to raise your hand. On your phone, you go down below to more, click that, you'll see raise hand here. And if you finally are calling in on a telephone, and some people do that, you could just hit *9 and that'll raise your hand. And when you click *9 again, it'll lower your hand. So those are the ways you could get my attention. And so I could ask you to unmute and you could be unmuted. If you can't find any of these, then just go like this in front of your camera and I will eventually will see you. Okay. Or somebody will tell me that they see you. Hey, I want to, Marty, you seem like a young guy. Well, here in this room, you're a young guy. Marty Johnson Jr., career Navy retired chaplain.
Yes, I am. So I retired Navy chaplain in 2013. Before I was a naval chaplain, I was in Marine Corps down at Camp Lejeune in 2nd Marine Division. I'm 57 years old.
That's how old I am. We call that a young guy.
Yeah. So I just did what I wanted, did what I needed to do, and stayed in the sea services, the naval service. And I wanted to make sure I was there with the guys when they went over in the last sort of wars, Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. And I wanted to make sure that they didn't go alone. So I went Chaplain Corps and tried to keep all of our people together, keep them human, and help them stay alive. Simple as that.
Work.
And
that's huge work, Marty. Marty, can I ask you a question? When you're a Navy chaplain, when you're a Navy chaplain and you're assigned to the Marine Corps, do you have to go through boot camp?
Yeah.
Like you do. Okay, you did it.
Yeah. I was a Marine, so I am a Marine. And so Semper Fi to all of you here. And if you're going to be talking about the Tet Offensive, that's discussed. So I'll be sitting back and listening in on the real Marines. But I was a Marine. Yes, I am a Marine. And so, but then I became a naval officer, which means a lot of Marines want to tackle me and strangle me. But in short, yeah, when you get assigned to the Marine Corps as a chaplain, it was easy for me because I was one. But when you get assigned there, you're going to go with a battalion or a regiment, and where they go, you go, and you will train with them. And they do have a designator now where all of those people from the quote unquote fleet get trained to be able to go with them. So do the corpsmen, as many Marines will tell you here. The corpsman, the chaplain, the doctor, we all go through what they do. And I was a Marine, so I was seeing it for the second time.
And you now work in the private sector, working with reserves and National Guard units.
Yeah. So what we're up to is I'm working with Department of Labor. There's a little program where you basically try to get information out to folks who are trying to increase their employment. So Department of Labor had a program, and many of you former Marines, soldiers, airmen, sailors, and coasties, some of this stuff was not around until the late 80s and 90s. But the Transition Assistance Program is what it is. What they've created a new program now. And now there's the off-base transition training program. That's a simple way to say it. Okay. And all it is it's designed to help people get employed or stop being underemployed. The long and short of it is, it's the transition program that some people never had, and the transition program that followed the men and women who served and are now out and living their lives. So that's what I'm doing, trying to help National Guard, reserves, and any veteran and veteran spouse that wants to take a look at how to change their circumstance if they want to.
And it says here the off-base transition training pilot program is an opportunity for veterans currently serving in the National Guard and Reserve and their spouses to take control of their career through workshops to help them meet their employment goals. And this is a program through the Department of Labor, correct?
Correct. So Department of Labor put it together, and then Congress signed it last year. The first 5 states, Pennsylvania was one of the first 5 for this to roll out. 5 more states will roll out in the summer. And so they're trying to get it to 25 states in the first 3 years. And Pennsylvania was one of the first 5. And so now that the program is rolling out, I signed up on board and said, how can I get this word out to everybody that I know that's a veteran spouse, family members? It just doesn't matter now. If you are a veteran or there's a veteran spouse, or if your son's a veteran, your daughter, this is available to them. They're not kidding around. This is stuff that was restricted to the base, and now it's off base. So it's fantastic. So I'm just trying to help.
Could you please, if you're going to stick around this evening and hear some stories, put your contact information in the chat here. And you could also upload materials to the chat that people can then download, take a look at. Just if you know, you may not have anybody in the, currently in the National Guard or Reserves now or looking for employment now, but people here might know somebody, might know a family member or a neighbor.
Sure.
So yeah, please do stick around. And I am absolutely going to call on you again to come, because we love to do a program at least once a year with military chaplains. So thank you very much.
You got it.
Joining us.
Hey, you bet. I'll put my stuff in there right now. And I want to hang around. I want Tet Offensive. Come on. I want to hear from people who are there. This is great.
Yeah, we have really interesting people here. Really interesting group here. And before we get to the Tet Offensive, one more thing that I want to cover, and that is we had an article in our magazine. It was a post on our blog. What is a warrant officer? It turns out that this article was kind of Army-centric, and we heard back from some Marines and from Navy that how things work in the Marines and Navy is a little bit different. And so we had a wonderful rebuttal from Bob McPherson, who is in our Zoom room tonight. What is a warrant officer? A view from the Navy. I thought I would have Bob kind of share his perspective of what he thought was wrong with our article. And then we also have Rich Tourette, don't we? Brad Washabaugh here.
Yes, we do.
There we are. There's Rich, Chief Warrant Officer 5 with the Marine Corps. So let's see. I'm going to ask Rich to unmute. If you could unmute, and then I'm going to be looking for Bob McPherson. Takes me a while to. I don't have my wingman here to help me look through. Let's see here. Bob McPherson, I saw you coming in, Bob. Raise your hand, Bob. Oh, there you are. I see you. I see you. I see you. There you are. There you are. Bob, let's start with you. How are you tonight?
I'm really good. Thank you for asking.
Tell me the issue that you had with our What is a Warrant Officer article in VBC Magazine.
Well, actually, as I've gone back and reflected on it, if it had just stayed what is a warrant officer and stayed solely focused on that piece of it, you guys would have been great, because a warrant officer is entirely different than a chief warrant officer. A warrant officer is, in fact, a non-commissioned warrant officer. They receive a warrant, and it's usually from a convening authority. And that part was really good. I guess what kind of got me was that the two were so conflated and kind of went back and forth. And even between the services, there's difference on the technical specialties of a warrant officer. The Navy is pretty unique, as was in the article, the Navy just being the Navy. But the Navy found the need for having highly technical, specialized people in leadership positions. So they developed the Chief Warrant Officer program a long time ago. Actually, it goes back over 150 years. And the Navy has always used the Chief Warrant Officer program as a way to supplement their technical services. For instance, when I became a warrant officer, Chief Warrant Officer, my skill set, I had gone through at least at that point about 57 different technical schools applying to nuclear submarines and submarine support systems. So in some ways, it's almost like getting a super college degree. So you get that experience, you get that you have to be a chief petty officer in order to even become a chief warrant officer. So in the article, one of the things that kind of got us a little bit, and it wasn't just me, there was some of the folks in my warrant officer community, is that it's not everyone can just become a chief warrant officer. It's a highly competitive process. You put in a package, you go through local screening boards, you go through a national screening board. The year that I was selected, there were 1,100 applicants and there were 13 people that made it through to the next level. So you can understand we're a little on the proud side about what we've done. And I know the Bible says pride goeth before the fall. Sorry, Chaplain, I get that.
We forgive you.
I'm a part-time minister, so I also have that in my skill set as well. But we are very proud of the fact that the people that are still in the program need that special recognition. It's part of who we are to recognize, and this is the most important part, I think, for all of us, is that without having a college degree at the time, I subsequently got one later, but without having a degree, it was the only path that I had that I was going to be able to easily become a commissioned chief warrant officer. And that commissioning means everything. It means that the President of the United States has deemed you worthy of being this super technician, worthy of doing jobs that many other people were not capable of doing. And not to their fault, it's just we worked really hard to get to that point. So I think when I reread the article, I'm trying to be as generous as I can with it and recognize that had it just stayed, what is a warrant officer, it probably would have been a little closer to the truth. But what is a chief warrant officer got conflated in there. And that was where most of my problem was.
That's where a key distinction is. And I've seen Marty here nodding his head, a Navy officer, and he put in the chat, wow, a CW5. We are privileged. Hard to find those guys around. There aren't many of you then in the Navy.
No, in fact, there's even less of us now because at the end of the Cold War, the need for us really started shrinking rapidly. I retired in 1994, and in 1994, I was a CW2 and getting ready to make W3, and they looked at my assignments, they looked at where I was going next, and I was already over 20 years, and my family and I made the decision that, you know, after 5 submarines, 2 surface commands, and 2 shore duties, it was time to retire.
Time to retire. Absolutely. You sent me this. This was a part of your tag. It's clearly something that means a lot to you. Could you explain what this is, what this patch is, this insignia?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the Mustang patch. It's not an official Navy patch by any means, shape, or form, but anyone who's ever been a Mustang knows the saying, I did it the hard way. It's kind of a little tiny little jab at some of our other officers that maybe had gone to college or had not gone to the academies. So it's kind of our jab of saying, well, you know, I did it, but I did it the hard way. You could take that both ways too, by the way, because you could look at it and say some of us are a little slower learners. But I absolutely am proud of all the chief warrant officers. W5 is just a phenomenal. That's about as rare as hen's teeth, in case anybody knows that.
Yeah.
So
what is a Mustang? What is a Mustang?
Yeah, actually, you know, the best place to find out a Mustang is I've got a blog called theleansubmariner.com. And I know we've talked about that before.
Yes.
In fact, I reposted a post tonight on the blog, and it talks about what a Mustang is. And the definition of a Mustang is a horse that was wild, that was raised in the wild, and somehow learned the disciplines that it needed to survive. And that's what a Mustang truly is. Anyone who's a chief warrant officer or limited duty officer in the Navy is considered to be a Mustang.
That's so cool. You know, I've heard the term Mustang and I knew what it referred to, but I didn't know that that was the etymology. That was the origin of the connection between a horse Mustang and a chief warrant officer. Thank you so much, Bob, for coming on tonight and clarifying that. And also thank you for offering that wonderful post that we posted. I will put the link here in the chat so people could read it and read about your service. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have also a Marine Chief Warrant Officer, Rich Tourette. Rich, you are with us. You, Brad Washabaugh.
Yes, right here. Thank you, Todd. It's my pleasure to have Rich with us. He is a Chief Warrant Officer 5, retired from the Marine Corps. And as Bob was talking about, there aren't many Chief Warrant Officer 5s around. And what makes it unique is that Rich is a infantry weapons officer, which is even more selective in the Marine Corps. I don't know how many there are, but we're very privileged to have Rich with us tonight. We served together in Hawaii. He was a platoon sergeant in my rifle company. And he has been a drill instructor. He has been a trainer of the Marine Corps' best rifle squad in the Marine Corps. He has done so many things. He's a combat veteran. He is highly respected. We still have reunions of our rifle company, and all they do is talk about how much Rich influenced their life. So I know there's a lot of questions and mystique about warrant officers, but we're privileged tonight to have a few with us, and it's my friend Rich that hopefully will answer some questions about the warrant officer program in the Marine Corps, and maybe a little bit about his experience as a Marine gunner. They call themselves a Marine gunner in the Marine Corps. Rich, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thanks very much for allowing me to be with you this evening and for the invitation, Brad. I think my hat size is a couple more bigger after hearing Bob talk about warrant officers and having served in the Marine Corps as a CW05 Marine gunner. I'm certainly honored to have this opportunity to share. As Bob said, the Marine Corps wants warrant officers because they provide a source of some technical expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And there are warrant officers in just about every MOS in the Marine Corps. 44 of the MOSs are considered the regular warrant officers. And in the infantry, we have the warrant officer Marine gunner, who is an infantry weapons officer by designation, and also designated by the Commandant of the Marine Corps as a Marine gunner. The Marine gunner program goes back to the First World War, when the first warrant officers were appointed in the Marine Corps. The first one was actually designated as a Marine gunner. The big difference is that for a Marine gunner, you wear the warrant officer insignia, and you also wear a bursting bomb. Designate you as a Marine gunner.
Okay. And this right here is the CW05, the Chief Warrant Officer 5 insignia for the Marine Corps, from what I understand.
Yes, it is.
There, you, like in the Navy, as a Chief Warrant Officer, endangered species, there aren't that many of you? Marines?
5% are Chief
5%.
Warrant Officer 5.
Do you?
5% in each specialty are
Okay.
Chief Warrant Officer 5.
Okay.
So a very small number.
I'm guessing that you probably encounter even military people who see this insignia and don't quite know what to make of it.
Certainly that's the way it was when I was first appointed a warrant officer in 1992. I think I got promoted to CW05 in 2000 or 2001. And just seeing that insignia, as you said, was very foreign to people, and even more so seeing the bursting bomb on my other collar.
Yeah.
People weren't, enlisted Marines weren't sure whether or not to salute.
Yes, I've heard that.
If
Right.
they approached from the side that had the bursting bomb, the left side, they weren't sure whether or not to salute. So you often had to remind them that it was appropriate for us to exchange salutes.
This is great. All right, here we go. Jeff Witherell, you have your hand up. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yeah, Rich, I was Army, and I was going to ask you, what echelon did your CW5 sit in the Marine Corps? What level is the CW5 assigned?
As a CW05, usually at the division level, or for me, my assignment as a CW05, I was at the basic school where Marine officers are trained, and at the infantry officer course. And I was also the Ockfield sponsor for the infantry weapons officer community.
I see.
So
The reason why, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rich.
I was just going to say most of them are at division, and maybe some at regimental level as well.
Yeah, the reason why I asked that is because in the Army, for instance, I was in my second specialty was military intelligence. So I was in a battalion. I was the XO of a MI battalion. So we had a bunch of warrant officers in there because of their technical abilities. I had I'd have W1, CW2, CW3s, and I'd have a warrant for direction finding. I had one for analysis. I had one for jamming type technology. We had a motor warrant. At the division level, you added in there another logistics warrant. Up at the G4 staff, it would be a CW3 at division level or brigade level, but you had them spread up that way. The fives were, like you say, division and above, you'd have a 5, then those different specialties, all the way up the line.
They're very specialized, of course, throughout all the services, and the Marine Corps is unique in that gunner rank and the accomplishment. I can tell you, as an infantry officer, there are a few people in the battalion that I would seek their counsel, and one of them was the Marine gunner, because they would not only advise you, but they would advocate for the proper employment of infantry weapons. And in the infantry, it's all about fire and maneuver and employing those weapons in the correct way, understanding them and how best to train with those weapons. Rich, do you have any quick stories you could tell about maybe when you were a gunner and how you influenced the proper employment or advocated for infantry weapons?
Yeah, I would always tell, when I was a CW05, telling younger warrant officers that in an infantry battalion or infantry unit, as the gunner for that unit, you need to be the shell answer man. So you're the guy that, because you are the guy that has a long history of expertise serving in the infantry. And you are the advisor to the commander, whether it be the company commanders or the battalion commander, regiment or division. I used to always say, though, not only am I the advisor to the commander, but I'm the advisor to every unit leader, from the fire team leader to the division commander. And I made myself available to help them in any way that I could. My idea of what my job was, what can I do to help you to train your Marines to close with the enemy?
Yes. Yeah.
Rich, it sounds like that a chief warrant officer then has to not only be an expert in particular field, but has to be an excellent communicator, an excellent teacher. If you're going to be advising all sorts of people up and down the chain of command, you're going to have to learn how to explain things in 12 different ways and 12 different languages. I mean, that's my assumption. Jeff Witherell.
I was just going to add to that. The warrant officers I had were very technical, just like Rich is. And we're talking about signal intelligence, electronic warfare, electronic intelligence. These guys are up there in the ether, these guys. And
yeah, you
have to learn how to dumb it down when you're talking to officers at the staff levels, and that you can't talk electrons to those people. I'm telling you, you can't talk to troposphere and stratospheres and all that. You can't get into that.
I can relate to that, Jeff. Absolutely. Rich, is that the case?
Absolutely. And another thing we used to say in the gunner community is that we were teachers and coaches.
Yes.
Teachers and coaches, yes. Not only for young enlisted Marines,
yes,
NCOs or staff NCOs, but for officers as well, yes. Especially young lieutenants and captains.
Yes.
Because of your position as the Marine gunner for an infantry battalion, you get a great deal of respect from the enlisted Marines, but also from the young officers.
And I think to those who haven't served in the military, I bet all of us have had a professor or teacher or something like that who knew their subject matter very well, but couldn't teach it. Those are two different things. You could be an expert in something, but not quite know how to teach it. And I bet you that separates a lot of people out, washes a lot of people out of chief warrant officer training.
And I think for the Marine Corps, definitely something that during the selection process, this is what the Marine Corps is looking for. Not only somebody that knows their job inside and out, but can teach others.
Right. Wayne Wicks, you were a Navy warrant officer. You also had, I think, the same kind of response that Bob McPherson had to the warrant officer article.
Right. That's correct.
Yeah. Tell me what you've been listening to. Does it ring true?
It does ring true. And I was a cryptologic officer. So I was a communications technician for 16 years before I got selected to be a warrant officer. and my specialty was I was electronic maintenance, but that because I was in the cryptologic field, I qualified to be a cryptologic warrant officer. And one of the differences between the Army has warrant officers, and they're appointed by the Army, and the Navy and the Marine Corps, they're commissioned. And part of that difference is we could do enlistment ceremonies for enlisted people. You know, we can swear them into the military, but as the way I understand it, the Army, they're not entitled to do that. I think that's correct. That's just one of the differences between a CW and a CWO, I guess.
That's true.
It was a great experience for me. And like Bob said, hi, Bob. Very few of us were able to obtain that, and we're very proud of the fact that we did.
Yeah, one of the things about being a chief warrant officer in the Navy, and it's a very unique thing. If you think about a ship has a commanding officer. So a chief warrant officer can actually command a ship. Now, everybody else is in front of him is going to have to die first. But by law, the chief warrant officer can accede to command. My opportunities as a chief warrant officer, my very first one was on a floating dry dock that was in Holyloch, Scotland, that had been built during World War II, that serviced the largest nuclear submarines that we had at that time. And it was a pretty amazing thing to be able to say, you know, I had been a chief just a week before that. Now I'm a chief warrant officer, and I'm building a crib for a nuclear submarine to safely dock him and do repair work on him on a vessel that was built long before I was born. So that's really stretching your skills and your ability. And that's just one example of it. It's the only position that I could have taken that quickly in my career, which was really only about the 16-year mark, to be able to command a division and a department. And the department contained about 200 people in it at that point, of all different services, damage control, hull technicians, people that were doing all sorts of different things to support that submarine while it was in command. And so that's the other reason why chief warrant officers are so important for the Navy. Leadership was mentioned. And I would tell you that the leadership skills that I learned coming up to that point and from that point until the day I retired certainly led to a very successful second career. And I'm now in my third career. I'm a chief of staff for a county commissioner here in Westmoreland County. And I have to be honest with you, every day I'm drawing on those leadership skills and the skills of other people that taught me and showed me how to do these things in a very difficult situation.
Obviously, your communication skills are excellent, Bob. Man, it is amazing to listen to somebody so fluent and eloquent. Jeff Witherell.
I was just going to add to Bob, we were talking about command. Yeah, the warrant officers in the Army, they're the last to command. For instance, like an aviation battalion. Aviation battalion is a rank heavy battalion. It has a major as a company commander, and then the platoons will be run by captains. And then you'll have like a deputy in there, like as a lieutenant. The rest of the pilots, all the pilots are warrant officers. So they'll have an aircraft in that, but they won't be in charge, you know, of a section or anything. They're a pilot. And the same thing with our battalion. The other battalions the same way. We had the technicians, and they'd be in charge of a section or something like that, but they weren't in a command position.
Thank you so much, Jeff and Rich and Wayne and Bob, for sharing your educating us a bit more about warrant officers in the Navy, Marine Corps, and Jeff in the Army. I appreciate it very much. I think this is something that we're going to have to revisit. I want to turn now to the Tet Offensive. It's the 55th anniversary of that infamous event, and we could talk a little bit, if you're not familiar with it, what it was. Certainly anybody who served in Vietnam, and pretty much I think anybody of the Vietnam era would remember those devastating first few weeks of the Tet Offensive in early 1968. And we also have with us Ray Gleason, who served in Vietnam, a wonderful writer who wrote a book called A Grunt Speaks, A Devil's Dictionary of Vietnam Infantry Tales and Terms. And we're going to go through some tales and terms with him later. But I want to start, if we can, with Fred Abate Marco, just because, Fred, you're another writer. We have a lot of eloquent people here with us. We have some smart people in the Veterans Breakfast Club. You know, I mean, They're not all crayon eaters. We have some people who really know how to write. Fred, you are one of them, and you keep this wonderful blog. We shared today an entry in your blog, a series of essays really about your Army service. And you have a really interesting story, and this is a picture of you. Ray Gleason might call you a REMF, which I understand, REMF is a Vietnam term, and it stands for Rear Echelon Merry Fellow.
There's no question you got that right.
Okay.
Yeah, you see me there with my cigarettes, which I have subsequently given up a long time ago.
What was you weren't there during the Tet Offensive.
I was not. That photo is taken from the Public Information Office at the AmeriCal Division in Chulai in 1970, 71. I was there for Tet 71,
right.
But the photo you see in my background is a little noodle shop in Saigon, where I got my full education about Tet 1968 from the perspective of the son of a VC commander who ran a cell out of that little noodle shop, which attacked the U.S. Embassy, the presidential palace, the Saigon radio station, and in addition to the wonderful soup they serve there, there's a little museum upstairs. And boy, did I get an education about how 100 VC guerrillas who infiltrated the city over the course of a couple of weeks leading up to January 30th or 31st, when it happened in 1968. They holed up in the attic, and then their assignment that night were the 3 locations that I mentioned. This is Mr. Lapp that you see that I'm with. He is the son of the commander, Mr. Tao, who has subsequently passed away. Mr. Lapp is about 10 years my junior. He took it, and those are some of the pictures of the commandos that were holed up there at the noodle shop. Only 17 of them survived that night.
17 out of how many?
17 out of about 100 who were in that noodle shop. Mr. Lapp was waiting tables. He was just a schoolboy, and he knew that it was a VC infiltrator who came to town when they would come to his restaurant and order something that was not on the menu, and then he would send them up a back staircase to this little impromptu barracks where they stayed for weeks. Prior to that, in this noodle shop, in the basement, there were arms that had been smuggled for weeks. Rockets, grenade launchers, rifles. People from the ARVN, from the US military would be having their noodle soup, not knowing what was going on there.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second just to reinforce something that you said. Look how small this noodle shop is. This is not a large, enterprise. You had 130 VC living upstairs and then a basement full of weapons, all in preparation for the Tet Offensive.
And there were many, many like it, I was told. If you go there today, if you can read Vietnamese, there's a little sign outside proclaiming it as a national monument, but it is still just a very unassuming noodle shop.
And you know what I did? I'm sorry to interrupt you again, Fred, but I just want to let people know I took the initiative to run this through Google Translate, and this is the translation. Doesn't seem to make any sense to me at all. National, which often happens in Google Translate with Vietnamese. National History writes the principal department of section see in the Mao then campaign 1968, but you could see ranking decision of the Ministry of Culture and Information. You can see that this is given an official designation as an important historic site in the Vietnam War.
Yeah. So that was my introduction to Tet 1968. I also visited Hue in my return in 2018. I remember as a civilian before I was drafted in 69, seeing those most vivid and horrifying images of the Battle of Hue. And there on site in 2018, my guide took me to these huge, I assume they were brass or bronze urns that are on the Imperial grounds, and you can still see the scars of the bullets that were fired during the battle for the Citadel in Hue. One incredibly amazing time that I don't have to tell a lot of you fellows who were there, and those of us who experienced it as civilians. It turned the tide of the war in so many ways.
Yeah, we could talk a little bit about that. It was the Tet Offensive was a devastating military defeat for the Vietnamese, for the NBA, for the Viet Cong. Absolutely devastating. I think of the official end of Tet is something like September 15th, 1968. And during that time, between January 30th and September, I think 58,000 NVA and VC were killed. 58,000, about the same number of Americans killed during the entire war. A devastating tactical military defeat, but a strategic victory because of how it impacted American public opinion. Chuck Jenkins, I see that you're with us tonight. Chuck, were you in Hue in Tet 1968?
I was, yes.
I thought you were. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Yeah, I wanted to hear what some of the other veterans had to say about the that time.
In other words, hey, you don't want to talk, but you know what, Chuck, you showed up, so I'm going to make you say a few words here.
Yeah.
Just because I just want to let people know Chuck received a Silver Star for his service in Vietnam in 1968. And here's an article here in the local newspaper of Pittsburgh. Bellevue Marine wins Silver Star in Viet. There you are. And here's a Silver Star. You were with D Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. Last fall, you were honored by the Steelers on the field during the Patriots game. And they showed a wonderful video of you and your service. And this is a photo I had never seen before. The first time I saw it was at the Steeler game. Here you are receiving the Silver Star. Can you tell us a little bit about what you received the Silver Star for?
It was for a operation we conducted back in September. It's called Operation Swift. We were attacked at our night defensive position and just about overrun by a North Vietnamese force. We lost probably about 13 men that night. I'm not quite sure why I got the Silver Star. It was my job. All I did was what I was supposed to do. I had a platoon. At the time, I was a platoon sergeant. The platoon leader wasn't out with us that time, and so I took over the platoon, and all I did was did what I was supposed to do, being a platoon sergeant. So that evening we lost 13 people. Then about this 2 days later, we lost another 6. So it was quite intense. It was an intense battle.
And Chuck, I've read a lot of your memoir of the war, and it just, to me, it's exhausting reading. It just seems from about that time through 68, you're just fighting every day. It's getting worse and worse. What do you remember of Tet?
Well, I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be here even talking. Tet, I can remember Tet. We at the end of January, we were Delta Company was at High Van Pass, which is right off of Route Highway 1. We were guarding a artillery support and all we did was just patrols, and the NVA had stepped up their game at the end of January and the early part of February. And I can remember we got orders to meet back up with our battalion, which was up at Fulok. That was a few clicks away from us. But the first day we started up Highway 1, we started taking B-40 rockets and all kind of intense fire. I think we lost 8 or 9 people that day. Fortunately, no KIAs. They were mostly all wounded in action. So after that first day, we had to go back to the base camp and regroup, and we knew we'd have to go up there a second day. So the second day on Highway 1, we started to go up to try to hook up with the rest of the battalion that was up at Fulok. And again, they hit us. They were in a small ville up there. And we were pounding them with artillery and everything. And well, we couldn't break through, so we had to go back to the base camp again. And so the third day, instead of going out in the morning, they were going to do a night gig, and that didn't work out too well. Although by the time we got up through the ville, they had gone. The enemy just floated away.
Just disappeared.
So that's just before we got up into Way. From there, they trucked us up into Way City. And when we got to Way, we were attached to the 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, and they had just about cleared the whole south side of the city. It was the 2-5 it was. In Way City, I was blessed again, because once the 1st Battalion, 5th Marines got there, we were supposed to cross the river, and our objective was to take the Citadel. And the captain at that time, Harrington, he split my platoon up. And I was assigned to take a couple squads on truck duty, convoy duty back to Fubai and take the wounded and ammunition supply. And the other half of the platoon crossed the river into the Citadel. And of course, they had a cold time over there, to say the least. Bong Tar, we lost quite a few people there. I think Delta, I think we lost about 15 or 16 KIA in Way City. But once I got up to Way City, once I got to the platoon again, to the company, they had already taken the Bong Song Tar, and they lost quite a few people trying to take that. But then, see, I was only there for 2 days, and I didn't have to do any of that fighting at the Bon Song Tower, just half the other platoon. But the second day I was there, we were just up against the wall, just before we got to the Citadel. And here this dirty, rotten guy threw a grenade at me, and it bounced at my feet. And I looked at it and I said, well, I sure as hell ain't going to jump on it. So I got up and went to the rear, and it went off, and it sort of blew me off my feet. And fortunately, all they had was a couple pieces of shrapnel on my backside. And that was my ticket home. That
was your ticket home.
Second Purple Heart. So that was it. So I was done.
Chuck, you made reference to the Bong Song Tower, and there are many iconic photos of that combat, Marines in combat. This is one of them. If you could see this here.
Yes, yes. That was, that was Delta Company. I can't recognize any of the guys. A couple of the guys that were in the platoon, I remember they were wounded. No, I still just don't recognize those guys. And that's the thing, we were moving so much during that period of time. We were getting new people in. We had lost, half the company we had lost before we even got to Way City, trying to get up Highway 1. So there was, like I say, only 1 or 2 that I can really actually remember their names.
Jeff Witherell, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
No, I had it up mostly. I was just going to move ahead with Fred. I saw Fred was in the AmeriCal division. And the only reason why I had my hand up is I was going to ask Fred, since I saw that date on there, was he there when Callie was arrested in the AmeriCal division for the massacre?
Good question. Fred, about-
Callie, no, I was there when Callie was actually found guilty.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was there much later.
okay.
Okay, good. Okay, because the reason why I ask is Callie, when I was at Benning in 71, he was there under house arrest.
Right.
And now house arrest for this guy was really ridiculous. I mean, he was on house arrest, but you'd see him at the club with his 2 guards, eating supper at the Oak Club. And then he'd be there playing bingo, and there's the two soldiers guarding him, and they'd have to go back to his quarters and things like that. But it was, I just wanted to know about Callie. Okay.
But by the time I got to the AmeriCal division, all their sins were widely exposed by 1970, 71.
Okay.
Fred, if you can put in the chat, like that we put in our VBC bulletin on today, if you could put a link to your article about the noodle shop in Saigon, that would be terrific. If you could, do you know how to do that?
Absolutely, no problem.
Okay, very good. Very good. That'd be great. If you could put it in the chat, share it with people, because people should really read it. It's a really interesting read. And in fact, Fred's you could read his whole story pretty much on his blog. You were kind enough to allow us to run one of those essays in our magazine last year about how you joined the Army and how you joined the Army to begin with, which is a wonderful story. I want to invite anybody who is in the Tet Offensive. I know that we have several people here who were in Vietnam during Tet, but please do raise your hand if you want to share a story of just a memory, what it was like. I know we have Sam Christie, who was a Donut Dolly during Tet. Why don't we get a Donut Dolly perspective? How about it, Fred?
Sounds right to me.
Well, Fred Christie. Hi, Fred Christie.
Still sounds right to me.
Just unmute.
Sam, we can't hear you. Oh, you may not have a... Here, let me look here. You may not have a... Huh, we can't hear you, Sam. Okay, I'm going to ask you to unmute. Try it again. There we go. Still can't hear you. Sometimes, I know this happens with Julia Parsons, who's with us tonight. Sometimes when you put your earphones, plug your earphones in with that little 1/8" adapter, sometimes that has an effect on the microphone. So I'll go. Ted Debiak, were you there for Tet? Let me ask Ted.
I was in Vietnam in 1967 and the beginning of 1968. Yes.
Okay.
However, no, I was not in Tet. I was in a hospital in Japan. I was injured in December of 67.
Christmas Day?
Pardon me?
Christmas Day.
Yes, Christmas Day, yes.
Right.
And I was sent to a number of evacuation hospitals, then eventually the Philippines, then eventually evacuated to Japan. But on January 30th, when it began, I remember seeing all of the people that were listening to radios with shocked looks on their face, because the Tet Offensive, as you said, started at the end of January. Yeah. So, but no, I was not in the Tet Offensive. I was already injured at that time.
I'm going to ask you. There was a little bit of interference there. You do remember people should know Ted Debiak lost his arm on with a rocket. A rocket?
Rocket artillery. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, it was a short round, a defective round is what they said. I'm not quite sure what type of round it was. It was
friendly fire, short round, in your tent, in your hooch. Lost your arm, Christmas Day, 1967. Now I'm going to say something that I don't know if you want me to say this, Ted, but I don't know if I even want to say it, because I know it'll outrage everybody in the room. But Ted does not have a Purple Heart.
Yeah. Yes, that's yeah. Well, that surprised me when I finally looked at my DD 214 about a year or so after I was discharged. So,
yeah, there are some people working on that, and hopefully that'll get remedied. But you do remember being in a hospital and people reacting to the news of Tet.
Well, absolutely, yes. I remember the shocked look on their face because it made me scared, and that's one of my memories of Vietnam. Yes, and they were talking about the this combat that started, and about various towns being overrun, and it was just something that was totally foreign to me, because when I was in the 4th Division, working with the troops in Charlie Company, then we were generally superior. We generally didn't really have any major interactions with the Viet Cong, except for a few booby traps, and for infantry people that I had to treat. Yes, right. But in general, the American military was never overrun when I was on active duty with the military.
Right.
And so, and then this, I mean, it sounded to me like it was going to turn the war, as it actually did.
Right. Yeah, and not in a military way, but in this public opinion way.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ted. Thank you for joining us. Lou Nudy, how are you? You were in the Mekong Delta during Tet.
Yes, I was there for Tet. Talk about a rude awakening. It was unbelievable. I'd come off the road. The Highway 4 I would run convoys on Highway 4, and got off the road and was looking forward to a Vietnamese celebration with the Vietnamese company I was advising. So we had a lot of Bussy Day and U.S. libation, and I got very drunk. As a matter of fact, don't remember how I got from the Vietnamese compound back to my home, my compound. But anyway, I went to bed. The next morning, we start receiving incoming. And when you're there for a while, you would realize what incoming was serious and what wasn't serious. So this incoming was serious. So I got out of bed, we got into the bunker, and the fire lit up. We got out, and all of a sudden, our senior advisor's helicopter was coming into the helipad, and it stood on its tail and bored a hole in the sky, and the VC had surrounded our helipad.
Wow.
And then started 4 days of unbelievable, I guess, anticipation of what was going to happen next. We were there basically 14 Americans on an advisory team. We did have the U.S. 9th Division in Dong Tam, which was about 9 miles from us. But communications was horrible. What was mentioned before, the Air America was blown off the air. We couldn't even contact. We didn't know what was happening because we couldn't get any information from Saigon either. So totally bewildered. But it was harrowing for 4 days.
I could remember. And then after 4 days, it kind of things settled down enough.
Yeah, it settled down. The 9th Division took control of most of our province. The highway was open. We were able to get supplies. After the 3rd day, supplies out to the Vietnamese outpost pretty much by truck. Other than that, we were airlifting resupplies into them. My job was supporting the Vietnamese regional forces.
And your story and what Ted just said, I'm a historian. People should know I taught and wrote history for many years. I'm still a historian. And, from the perspective of history, we all know that, that the Tet Offensive was this uprising, and it was dramatic, and there were a lot of horrible images beaming to the U.S. But eventually, the ARVN and the U.S. Forces took back every inch of ground that was captured during Tet by the MVA and BC. But, you know, on February 2nd, Lou, Captain Lou doesn't know that. Captain Lou doesn't have the perspective of, you don't know how this thing's going to turn out, you know?
No, we didn't. I was completely surprised whenever we started getting incoming at very, very odd hours of the day. So our whole life turned around that night. But
can I ask you then, Lou, did your opinion of the war change at all because after Tet?
I think so. I think I was kind of pissed off and wanted to win the thing. And I think the people I was advising, the Vietnamese, had more skin in the game after that, and they were much better fighters after the Tet Offensive than they were prior to the Tet Offensive.
And these are the local and regional forces, the rough puffs.
The rough puffs, yeah.
Who were defending their hamlets, their villages,
yeah, right,
from Viet Cong.
So, and the thing that I was surprised, I was able to, by the 8th day of Tet, I was able to drive Highway 4 from the beginning of our where it began in our province down to where it crossed the Mekong in Yaldak, which was something we weren't able to do prior to the Tet Offensive.
Let's thank you so much, Lou. Hey, Larry Woods, let's get a view from the Air Force security forces, because I think you were at Tuiwa Air Base during the Tet Offensive. Larry, were you not? Ask you to unmute.
Sorry? I have to turn that off for a second. Yeah, I was.
Say hi to Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl.
She says hello.
No, she doesn't.
Yes, she does. The from the Air Force, it was pretty much, I think, consistent throughout. Everybody was getting hit. There were all the bases throughout South Vietnam got clobbered during that time period. The biggest ones, however, wasn't our base, but Ton Sanut, because that was kind of a joint base, and we did lose 5 security police on the front bunker that night because they were actually overrun when the VC attacked the front gate, and Benoit likewise got really hit badly. But like everybody else, it was just nobody knew. We all expected it to be just fireworks, which kind of went off at about midnight, and then at 1 o'clock, all hell broke loose.
How did you get concerned that this was going to be a turning point?
We weren't thinking about turning points. We were just thinking about what was going on. Turning points came later.
Turning points came later. Right. Thank you very much, Larry. And again, I want to invite just anybody who has a memory of that time, no matter where they were, even if they were on the home front, if they remember the Tet Offensive. I know, Annette, your brother was in Vietnam, Annette Grunseth, during the Vietnam War, during the Tet Offensive, I should say, and I think he wrote home about it. Bill Confer, how are you? I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I was I was stationed at Cu Chi, which is not far from Ton Sanut. I got there in August of '68, so I saw some of the Tet Offensive. But I can tell you that how they got all those weapons and things down to Saigon and that particular area. Why, we had, where I was at Cu Chi, they have a pretty successful book out, Tunnels of Cu Chi. And there are tunnels all around Cu Chi and Tay Ninh, which is in that war zone C and the third area. We at one time during this, I think it was in '68, they captured a 16-year-old boy who had been had never seen the light of day until the day we caught him, and they got him on the mountain at Nui Ba Din. It's a 3,000-foot mountain up near Tay Ninh, which is that's about 45, 50 miles north of north of Saigon. And yeah, it was an interesting time because there were so many tunnels all around Cu Chi. Even when you had security guards out there on the edge of the perimeter, you could see those bushes all moving at nighttime out there, you know. And some of them were, and some of them weren't, of course. But from time to time, it was a pretty harrowing time. And you can go there and you can actually visit those tunnels now. I wouldn't want to do it, but I'd sure like to see where they were, because we always knew they were there. And but I flew helicopters, and I flew Hueys, and my goodness, the Wolfhounds were part of the 25th Infantry Division out of Cu Chi, and we flew them all over the place and into some really nasty and terrible times. And for the gentleman down south there, why I did get down to Mito and Kanto a couple times, but the one time I got down there, why the 9th Division was telling me to bring my flight and break right out of the LZ, and when we broke right, that's where they happened to put their artillery. They were supposed to put it on the left side, so friendlies were shooting at us at the time. But yeah, we had an exciting time down there with the 9th Division. I might add that when I left Vietnam, I left there in July of '69, and I have another story that I want to tell sometime on the Breakfast Club. I actually had a midair collision with a Cobra gunship, and it knocked me out of the sky. I was in a command and control helicopter at 1,200 feet near a little town of Godaha, which was near the Eagle's Beak, which is a familiar area for some of the infantry guys, I'm sure, and maybe those folks down around Saigon, because it came down into that area, but it was actually closer to Tay Ninh. But yeah, we were at 1,200 feet, and 7 people survived the accident, 2 people died, and it was a I don't know, bad experience or a good experience. I was pretty happy when I woke up and was alive after the accident. So I pretty well bent the helicopter. They didn't bring it out of there. They blew it up in place. So, but it was a UH-1, a Huey, that I was flying with the command and control staff in the back seat.
We definitely want to hear that story. Would love to maybe even publish a magazine version of it.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Good.
MOA's already covered it. So
nice.
Military Officers Association, page 104 in their September issue. They covered the story, and the fact that I have a story group here at Brethren Village, where I let our veterans get up and tell their story, and then I try to put it out there on YouTube. I'm a little less sophisticated than you are with yours, but it's always a rewarding experience to hear all the stories. And
sure
I appreciate all those folks that were over there in Vietnam and shared their Tet experience, because it was a serious, very serious wartime.
We visit Cu Chi on our trips to Vietnam. We went in 2018. This is a picture of my younger daughter, Libby, who came on our trip in 2018. She went into one of those tunnels, and here she is coming out of it. We went again in 2020, and we're going in November, and Cu Chi is always on our itinerary because it's such a fascinating place. I'm going to ask Scott Masters, and then we're going to go to Lou. Scott.
Hi, Todd. I just had a question based on something in the chat. And that put something in there about the letters that her brother sent home.
Yes.
And I think this is something I've never heard. I've talked to plenty of World War II vets who talked about letters going home and how they were censored. I'm just wondering if letters sent home during Vietnam were censored in the same way as happened in World War II.
Fantastic question. Lou, did you censor any letters of your soldiers? You were a captain. You have to unmute, Lou.
No, there was no censoring at all from my standpoint or our unit standpoint.
Their letters were censored, though, weren't they? Mark Spear Digliosi, when you sent letters home, did
there could have been potential statements of atrocities and things of that nature. That's about all I could think of.
Mark?
Mine was probably censored, Todd, for reasons other than espionage.
Say no more.
They probably took some words out of there that nobody was supposed to see. So
yes,
I was there at an unusual bridge in the Tet Offensive. I actually was in AIT at Fort Polk, Louisiana, whenever Tet broke out on January 30th. And, they kept you busy. They hadn't fed you enough of the mushroom soil yet to keep you, to let you wander about and do that. So we didn't get a whole lot of news at Fort Polk because a lot of that time was basically training. But my dad would, whenever I would get a call to him on a Saturday night, he would say to me, the stuff is hitting the fan over there. What are you thinking and what are you doing? And I didn't think much more of it after that, and then we did get a few ruhas that the drill sergeants tried to encourage us and say that it wasn't near as bad as what it was. And we were winning because it was showing that the body count was higher.
Right.
And then when I got into Vietnam, it was there after the main Tet Offensive, and anybody out there that is more of an expert than I, please correct me. There were a series of mini Tets that happened after that. Yes. One of them being in the Washabaugh Valley. During the main Tet Offensive, the 1st Cavalry Division was in support of the Marines at Quai Son, withdrew, came back, set up for a while, and ended up in Operation Delaware in Washabaugh Valley, in which there was substantial losses of helicopter ships and all of that. But you couldn't tell me that Tet was over on April 19th of 1968. I was not convinced that Tet was over, number one. And then the other thing that really played to my fancy here is I certainly don't like you using the word 55 years ago, because that really made, when you said that, I gasped. I took a deep dry in. But because I can remember when World War II vets were celebrating their 50th anniversary of return and things like that, how old those guys looked.
Yeah.
Because they were really old compared to us. Now I'm beyond that 50th and going to 55. It'll be 55 years on April 4th that I left for Vietnam. So
wow, 55 years on April 4th. You look so young, Mark. You look like you could serve right now. And if people are looking at Mark's picture, they can see that Stetson up above his head there, hanging on a hat rack.
Gary Owens.
That's right. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Mark. Hey, I want to let people know we have a program that will be on the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II. Our own Glenn Flickinger is going to give a lecture. That'll be on Wednesday night, February 1st. We're doing this in partnership with a local library here. I'm going to put the link if you want to join. You have to register for it in the chat. Next week at this time on Monday night, we always have the Monday night happy hour. We're going to do a program on Space Force. And this man who is the ROTC commander, Colonel Matt Morand at the Citadel, I think it's the largest ROTC corps in the country. He is a member of Space Force. He's going to educate us on what Space Force does and why it was spun off as its own branch of service. That'll be next Monday, February 6th. I want to let people also know, Lou Nudy, look at this. You're a star. Lou, your beautiful face has sold so many magazines. Now, I got to say, the magazine is free. So, sale is kind of, we're using that loosely. But here is Lou on the cover. He came on our trip to Vietnam in 2018, and we have some articles about Vietnam and Vietnam Veterans Day. And we send this out to whoever wants to get a magazine. If you don't get it, let me know, and would love to put one in the mail to you, or 40 in the mail to you, like Bob Flage. Just put some magazines in the mail to you, Bob. You'll be getting them, and you'll be distributing them, and we're grateful for that. And then finally, we have a survey. We'd love to know how we're doing. I'll put the survey link in the chat here. If you could just let us know, what worked tonight, what didn't work, how we can improve. We'd love to hear it. I want to introduce Ray Gleason, who is a fascinating person and a wonderful writer. He was an ALERP in Vietnam, Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol Ranger, Army Ranger in Vietnam, 69, 70. He's a wonderful writer. He's a PhD in medieval literature. And one of his books is a Grunt Speaks, which I just read over the weekend. Really enjoyed it. What a beautiful book and fascinating book it is. This is a dictionary of Vietnam infantry terms. And, I started reading this, Ray, and thinking, we run a family show here, it's hard to talk about grunts terms without using obscenities.
Is that a challenge?
No. And I know that even in the book, you toned it down a little bit. But it's clear. What I love about the book is it's very candid. It's, sometimes graphic, but not gratuitously so. And just very insightful about how the grunt's view of the world, which is distinct from, those who serve in the rear echelon or serving elsewhere.
Well, first of all, I'd like to just say to my friend from my brother from the Americal Division, that a REMF is not an assignment. It's a state of mind. Okay. So I have found people as far back up the echelon as you can find who are there to help the guys on the line. They are not REMFs. It's the guy who's basically self-serving and wants everybody to worship at his altar. That is a REMF. So,
and just
I had to explain that to a colonel once. It didn't go well for me.
That wasn't the colonel that you were playing football with.
Oh, no. This is a guy I met when I was working in the military academy. He was the commandant of cadets. I think I referred to him as his whole career was being the maitre d' in somebody else's hotel. He was a infantry colonel with a 30-year career and never earned a CIB. I mean, there's a contradiction in terms for you.
You could Fred Abate Marco, this might be a nice birthday present for you. One of these shirts here, or rear echelon Merry Fellow. Here's a guy on a skateboard. That's one of your terms in your Devil's Dictionary.
That's right. And I hear we also have a donut dolly with us. One of my entries is donut dolly.
Yes.
And I just like to say, thank you, sister.
Yeah, we have a couple donut dollies. I think Betsy Tanner's with us, and Sam are both with us.
We really appreciated when you guys came out to see us.
I thought what we would do, and Ray, I'd love to have you on again to do a full program, at least on the dictionary, because and I really mean this, that if you have a loved one who served in Vietnam, especially somebody who served in the infantry, this book would be a wonderful gift because it is so I've gotten insights from the book that I really haven't gotten anywhere else. Thank you, Ray Voigt, and thank you very much, Ray, for making the connection to Ray Gleason here. I've decided to pick out a few of your definitions. This is one of them. Tell us about this. Washabaugh?
Washabaugh. I was at the 2nd Battalion, 35th Infantry. We were stuck outside a village called Duck Lop, and we were having a lot of problems getting resupply. So being grunts, we had to be very creative in how to get our hallucinogens. And the only thing we could get was
domestic Washabaugh beer. And when you held this stuff up to the light, it looked like a bad urine specimen. It had stuff floating in it. We were drinking it dry, and after a while, we got to enjoy it. And that's when we knew we were pretty much at the end. But a couple of years later, when I was back in the States, I had an Army buddy of mine was working in DC, and we found this bar in DC that actually had Washabaugh. So we went there figuring it was like the real stuff, but obviously, then I'm sure this is part of communist propaganda. Export Washabaugh is a lot like regular beer. It was very disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
and they still manufacture it. They added a 3. I mean, when we go to Vietnam, they sometimes serve this as an option, but it's 333 beer now. And my understanding, Ray, was that like vets would say the thing about this beer, Washabaugh, was like every can was different. Like every case tasted different. I mean, it's like they didn't use a single recipe. It was ugh.
Well, they were probably making it in the backyard, as far as I know, just reusing the bottles.
Kenneth Boyd, you have your hand up. I just want to acknowledge you. And did you have something you wanted to say?
I was in Delta Company, 229th Aviation Battalion, Division of 1st Cav. I was a crew chief on Hueys and Cobras. We didn't, my story is a little bit different because I kind of went over there thinking I was going to kill commies. And when I got over there, I saw we was running the country. And, I didn't like that part of it, but I pretty much just tried to do my own thing. I just got my helicopters looking good and tried to have as much fun as possible under the circumstances. I heard someone talking about Ashaw Valley. That was a trip. We flew into Ashaw Valley after the B-52s had bombed it. And I was surprised that we had to fly over snow-capped mountains to get there. And then when we got there, we had like, evidently they caught a battalion out in the open and they destroyed them. And so we had bunches of weapons still in boxes and stuff. Everybody got their pick of whatever kind of weapon they want, for a souvenir to take home. I was a kind of a water person. I was surfing before I went in, and I went swimming in the rain-filled bomb craters, which was kind of neat. We, doing Tet, which I really didn't know what that was all about. We were up in, first we were in Quang Tri, then we went to Wei. And the only thing I remember about that is we had stopped using the Bravo and Charlie model Hueys, and we were using Cobras. And the thing about that, I remember that we were usually the helicopters would go out on a mission, escort or something, and then come back in a few hours, and that'd be it for the day, maybe a couple of missions a day. During that time, they were out constantly. They would go out, they'd empty everything. My ship was they called a hog. It carried 76 rockets and a minigun in the nose that had 3,000 rounds of ammunition. And they would go out and they'd come back totally empty of ammunition, land, didn't shut the engine off. I would refuel while the engine is going, reload, and they go out again. And this happened all day long, from as early in the morning till late at night. They just kept flying in and out constantly.
Kenneth, what year, when were you in Vietnam? What year?
I was there from November of 67 to November 68.
Oh, geez. Okay. So you were there for all of that. And you were there with the first Cav when Mark Spear Digliosi was there. Kenneth, I don't believe I've ever seen you on one of our programs before. And I don't
No.
think I don't think I have your contact information. I would love to invite you to come back on and share more of your story. Could you email me or give me a call sometime?
Yeah, I could do that.
Okay,
And
I'm gonna
there's
put my email in the chat right here. And then you could email me back and I'll have your contact information because I want to invite you on a program to share more of your story, and I want to hear more of your story. Just because yes.
There's another one of us that Manny I see is here that he's the one that told me about this you guys club, and he was there with me. You know, he was younger than me, so he was kind of tagging along behind me over there. But he's probably got some stories too.
Manny, yeah, please, Manny, you too. Please do let me know. I'd love to have you guys back on to share more of your story. This is exactly how we kind of learn. We reach new veterans, hear new stories, new perspectives. Thank you, Kenneth, for joining us. I hope you'll join us again. Don't get lost. I don't want to lose contact with you. Where are you from? Where do you live?
I live in Hawaii.
You live in Hawaii. You're just trying to make us jealous. If you saw how Pittsburgh looked right now, oh my gosh. Okay, Sam, I will ask you to unmute. All right, Kenneth, thank you very much for sharing that. Bob Flage, you have your hand up.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the magazines. Looking forward to getting them.
Good, thank you.
They asked, there was a mention about, was anything censored? Here's a box of all my letters, or not all of them, but a box of letters that I wrote to my mother. She kept them all. So nothing's got cut out. Nothing's,
Nothing was censored.
Yes, nothing at all.
Okay.
At all. Yeah. During Tet, I was with the 3rd of the 60th, and we were at downtown and basically told, there's a truce coming up and it's going to be peaceful, et cetera, et cetera. And then when it hit the fan, we strapped up and basically we were pulling guard and doing, searches around the base camp itself, around downtown. I think 3rd of the 47th or 3rd of the 49th was down at down the road, Mito, and they got into some real bad street fights. But like I said, we were doing the local, and then we ended up over at Ben Long afterwards and doing search and destroys there.
And did you get a sense that were you apprehensive about where this all might lead?
Not really. Well, we knew that when the guys came back, when they finished down the road, and we knew that they had pretty well cleaned the place out there, that things were going to get better. We did get word about what was going on around the racetrack and up at the embassy, and but that was it, about it at that time.
I want to let people know our normal end time of our program is 8:30, and it's 8:28 here Eastern on my clock. I'm going to extend the program a bit, but don't feel badly if you need to go, drop off the program, say goodbye. We'd love to have you come back another time. But I just see some hands up, and this is such a fascinating conversation. I do want to extend it another 15 minutes. So I'm just making that announcement. Robert McCormick, you have your hand up.
Hi, Todd. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, how are you?
Okay. I got two little things. Balm-be balm, they always told us that it was made with formaldehyde as a preservative. I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's what we were told. And as far as Tet goes, I was on orders for the 199th Light Infantry Brigade, and I was stuck in Fort Lewis, Washington during Tet. So I was sitting there waiting to go over.
You were sitting there waiting to go over, and you must have been thinking, oh my gosh.
Getting some extra training and being kind of scared, to say the least.
I could imagine. I could absolutely imagine. Lou, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was one thought that I had when we were talking about censoring. There was after the second day of Tet, I was at the helipad just taking a nap on a pile of ammunition, and one of the I forget what they, I think they the hogs and the pagans, or anyway, they were the press corps showed up. It was they had 2 gunships in a slick, and I would have done anything to have a couple of gunships to go out and when we're dumping ammunition to give us some support. But anyway, they came over and asked me, what are all those bodies in the reservoir? I said, they're VC. How many are there? I think someone said there were 68 of them. Well, I didn't know they were VC. They were dead.
Wow.
And then they started pushing me, and I said, and very politely, I said, you know, F you, and decided I was just going to break off the conversation with them. Anyway, about 3 weeks after that, my senior advisor received a letter from McPhee requesting I be given an Article 15 for insubordination and conduct on becoming an officer because I didn't cooperate with those people from the press.
Wow.
Well, he gave this the commanding general McVie a very explicit response, which says basically was FN. so that, but you know, it was, the press was always out looking for stories and looking for the bad stories. So,
Ray Voith, is that how you pronounce your last name?
Yes, that's how. How much is it Voith?
Thank you.
Anyway, Ray Gleason has 2 books, The Grunt Speaks, and also a book called The Violent Season. I found The Violent Season to be much more interesting. It talks about his in-combat duty, and so I'd recommend people looking that up, and I put a link on the chat for that.
Yeah, here are 2 of the books, and he's written other books too. A Grunt Speaks and The Violent Season. The Violent Season is a novel. I think this is a story of the generation that fought the Vietnam War. Ray Gleason, is this a picture of you?
Yes, that was my 20th birthday in Bammy Tuit.
Boy, oh boy. And when were you in Vietnam?
I arrived in June of 1968, and I left the theater in April of 1970.
So you extended.
Yes, I kind of went Asiatic there for a while.
Why did you extend?
They pissed me off.
Who did?
The Vietnamese, North Vietnamese.
The enemy.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you wanted to stay there and finish the job.
I was trying, but luckily a little warm creme de menthe and a pregnant waitress brought me back to sanity. That's a story.
And that's what I mean. This book, it's not just a definition. There's like stories with every term, and that so it's an extremely entertaining book. And I do highly recommend that people read it. And Ray, I will be asking you to come back on for a fuller program. I think it would be fun to go through a lot more of these terms. Stephen of Stephen's iPad.
Yeah, hi, Todd. Can you hear me okay?
How are you doing?
Just fine. Well, great. I appeared with American G.
Stephen, you
helicopter.
are. Okay, you're breaking up on my end. Let's try this again. I'm gonna give you another point. It's getting a little broken up here. Go again.
Okay, how about now? Is it okay?
Good.
All right. So I was in Vietnam during Tet in the Central Highlands. I was a helicopter pilot based in Kontum. Kind of a strange thing that an assault helicopter company was kind of dumped all by itself in Kontum when we came over. We were deployed there from Fort Bragg. So we got there in October of '67, and most of us went home in October of '68. Tet was a pretty brutal time. We had been hit before with pretty good attack, but as other folks said, there was sort of the normal midnight celebration that everybody expected, some gunfire and firecrackers and things, and then at 1 or 2, they really hit us pretty hard. And I flew gunships and got a pair of gunships up, and was heading someplace to get some fuel. And my platoon commander, who happened to be on the ground, said, "Can you come back? They're just about to overrun the northeast corner and of our perimeter." And I said, "Okay, where do you want me to fire?" And he says, "Well, put it right on the fence." And I said, "Well, that's too close." And he said, "Well, that's where they are." So that was a pretty exciting time, and it went on for us for several days. I would say maybe into a week or so of pretty much continuous fighting. And I just heard from a friend of mine not too long ago who flew with the 4th Division. He said, "Oh yeah, Steve, I remember when we made a combat assault into the middle of your compound, brought in an infantry, probably an infantry company or to help us because we're in kind of deep shit, really."
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remind me, Stephen, that we should do a whole program with helicopter pilots. I think that would be really, I mean, you and Bill Confer, this is, yeah. Bob Flage?
Yes, sir. Could you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to put a plug in for another book since, this one's called A Slow Walk in a Sad Rain. It's a catch-22 of Vietnam, and it was written by a Green Beret, and it's got some amusing parts to it. It's a novel, but it's funny.
But it's funny. It's so there's okay, very good. I'm gonna look it up and see if I can put it in the chat. Greg Yost, how are you?
Wow, thank you so much. What a great program. I know Tet is so historically significant. It's great to hear from the people who were there, who sort of lived it. I can read about it and watch films about it, but it's great to hear what happened. I guess I have 2 questions one came up in the chat, and then I'll ask sort of the meta question that's also come up during the discussion. The one question is, if someone was up, for the people who were in Vietnam, if someone's term was up on, say, 15 February or 1 March, were they sent out, or were they kept around because of the combat? I'm thinking my father was discharged from the reserves in the middle of Tet, which I think was great because my father was in the reserves, and it put some stress on my parents' marriage and everything like that. And it was great that he got out, but I was wondering if that was sort of what was happening in country, where people actually, if they were up. And then my second meta question here real quick is, towards the end of Tet, 3 important things happened, and I don't know how it affected the soldiers there. And one was that sort of as it became obvious that on the ground there was this military victory going on, that Tet was a major military failure, have Walter Cronkite standing up on the CBS Evening News, in effect saying, "We're not going to win this."
Yeah.
Lyndon Johnson going on national TV saying, "I'm out of here. I'm I'm not going to run for re-election." And then Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination and all the riots. So I guess those 2 questions: were people being discharged from your units during Tet, and what did this sort of home front atmosphere affect? How did that affect you guys over in Vietnam?
Anybody want to field that question?
I'll take it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Ray, please.
I'm the only guy I know that actually got discharged from the Army in Vietnam. I'm sure that there were others.
I didn't know that ever happened.
I did it purposefully. I wanted to stay in Asia because that's where my family was. So I got discharged in Vietnam. But typically when guys got short, first of all, a short timer was kind of a jinx, because guys figured they haven't got me in the last 11 months, they're going to get me now.
Yeah.
So we treated our short timers very carefully. We usually tried to get them off the line or any way we could to kind of protect them. But these were guys who were going to Diros, which means going back to the States. They may still had times in their hitch or whatever.
Right.
But they would typically depart from out of, I think it was Tan Son Nhut, I know it was in the Saigon area. So they had to process out of the unit, the division, and then they had to go process down. So you basically had a 1.5 to 2 week administrative issue before you were actually allowed to leave country, where you couldn't be on the line. But when guys started getting short, a good commander would try to take steps to protect them. I know guys would be sent back to the combat trains to load helicopters.
Right.
Anything, or some guys be sent to the base camp, basically to be somebody's gopher. But after 11 months, most guys realize that, you made it, you're going home. We're going to try to make sure that happens for you.
For those who are in Tet, if you're DROS, Joe Griffey's, you're waving your hand. For those, if your DROS was, say, February 2nd, 1968, this is in the middle of the Tet Offensive, a dramatic uprising. Were you then delayed? I mean, were you said like, no, we're going to keep you in for another week or 2 or 3 or however long it takes until this thing is settled? If anybody knows that, I've not heard of that, Greg Yost. Joe Griffey's?
Good evening. Great topic, Ted. A lot of good subjects tonight. To add on what Ray said, I was pulled out of the field about 7 or 8 days that I had left in Vietnam. And we were told to be prepared, because if they got calls from Cam Ranh Bay that we flew home United, we flew home TWA, we flew home commercial. If they had seats, they wouldn't make you wait that week. So they said, do what you had to do, be ready. And they woke us up like 3 days later. We flew from Pleiku to Cam Ranh Bay, to Okinawa, to Fort Lewis, Washington, landed 2 a.m, and we were discharged. I was discharged. I had less than 60. If you had less than 90 days when you get back from overseas, you automatically got an early out. They would not waste the time and money of the government to let you go home on leave, send you across the country to another base only a month later to get discharged. But so I was actually discharged when I reached Fort Lewis, Washington, and I was only on the soil less than 12 hours, and I was back visiting my sister in California. No debriefing, no BS at all, no physicals. The whole process really sucked. I mean, you could have come back with malaria, leprosy, anything.
Oh yeah. Oh
went
gosh,
through
yeah.
2 medics with that, like a 10-second thing. But real quick, I know you're running late. Couple subjects. Bob talked about the box of letters. They would never read my letters, because my brother and I were in Vietnam during the Tet at the same time. And my father said he was Marine in Vietnam. I don't care what you do in Vietnam, write your mother every day. So I would write 6 or 7 letters at a time, half a page, very boring. My mother thought I had a job in the library in Vietnam. I didn't know how to explain what I was doing, where I was. So what I did, our moms thought the worst every day.
Yeah.
Moms I talked to, my own mom.
Yeah.
So what I did, I was going to add to her worriment or whatever. So I went home, I guess it was about a year ago. And my mother, when she passed away, she left me the box of letters. My God, they were so boring. They were so boring letters. But anyway, just a couple other fast things. We talked today about Tet. Ambassador Toll, I contacted you, Todd, today, short notice. She did 5 years in Vietnam. with the State Department, and then 3 years in Laos in 83 to 86, did the first 2 successful excavating of downed pilots that is happening today. And I think she'll just be she'll tell the story when she was in Vietnam from 68 to 71, her first tour. She's staying in a hotel in Saigon when the Tet Offensive happens. And they really hit the embassy bad. They did break into the embassy, according to Ambassador Toll. They did get over the wall and through the gate. And she was staying in a hotel because her suite that she had was not ready in the embassy. So they had her in a downtown hotel. She got a call that all senior ranking embassy members had to report to work. She said, how am I going to get the 3 blocks from where I'm staying in a hotel in Saigon to the embassy? She went outside and there was an AP armored personnel carrier with a half a dozen guys on it. She said, can you give me a ride to the embassy? And they said to her, jump in. She jumped inside. They protected her and they got her to the embassy. And just one other subject. The subject was brought up about Cali. The fallout from Cali went long after the trial. It went long after the funerals of the people of Saigon, after the heart-wrenching soldiers that had to go through the trial with Lieutenant Kelly. My good friend Dennis Murphy was put in for the medal 6 months after being a member of the Americal Division. He got shot 7 times. He got 2 Silver Stars, 4 Purple Hearts. They would not give him the Medal of Honor because they did not want to bring attention to the Americal Division honoring someone. And I think that's a disgrace. Someone who deserves the Medal of Honor should not have to qualify by somebody's past actions. And we're now working to get Dennis elevated back. I had a lot to say. I'd give somebody else a chance, but just a great show tonight with a lot of subjects.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us tonight. And also, thank you for connecting me to Ambassador Teresa Tall. I really do hope we can get her on and do a program with her.
Well, we'll take care of it.
Talk about a fascinating perspective from the State Department in Vietnam. WJM Dallas, how are you?
Well, good evening. I sorry, the video is a little strange here because this room is set up for virtual wine tastings out of Cortona, Italy.
What are you eating? What's on that plate?
That's Sonny Bryan's barbecue, my dinner.
Oh, that sounds good. And where are you?
I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Okay, and who are you?
I'm Justin Miller.
Okay.
That's Justin like the boots and Miller like the beer.
Okay, Justin.
I wear the boots, I drink the beer, and never drink out of my own boots.
And are you a veteran?
I am. I was not. In Tet. I was in training. I was in helicopter training at Walters and Rucker during Tet. My best friend was the 101st company commander, who said the best job he had the entire time he was in Vietnam was fighting in the Saigon streets, protecting tank companies. Because the only time he knew exactly what he was doing.
So you're another one of those helicopter pilots.
I am a helicopter pilot. Did a little Huey's, Cobras, and some Chinook time. But I was with it. My first time was with the 25th Division. I was a Little Bear with a division pilot. And since I wasn't there for first Tet, they came around again and had second Tet for us. So that's when they finally figured out we had tunnels under Cu Chi.
Yes.
And all 13 Chinooks got blown up.
Oh.
And we had to, as they say, we had to DD to Saigon, but we got all our helicopters out and blew up 2 51 caliber machine gun nests on the runway as we left, and the tower thanked us. Wow. But that's, so I'm just I was a cannon cocker before that.
Thank you so much, Justin, for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. And listen, my concern is I'm going to end the program and I'll never see you guys again. So please do, if you can, you could email me, Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. That's Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. We do these VBC happy hours every Monday night. Once a month, we do open conversation where we can finish some of these stories. Bill Confer and Greg Yost and Steven, and you guys will have the last words. What are we going to say, Bill?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, Stephen, I wanted to know what his unit was up there in Khartoum, because Khartoum was not a good place on a good day. And I was in the 116th Hornets at Ku-Chi, but I knew Khartoum and never wanted to go up there. And the other gentleman from Dallas, I'm guessing he was a mule skinner, because we were there when the 12 helicopters were lost. When they got the Chinooks, they had one crew chief in the back of one of those. They were throwing satchel charges in the backs of the Chinooks when they broke through the perimeter. And that one gentleman died with his helicopter. But yeah, it was a pretty disastrous night. We also took our aircraft down, I believe it was down to Fuloy that night. And I left there in a t-shirt and a pair of cutoff jeans and my flight helmet. And that was it when we got out of there. But it was a scary night because they were running through the company area. They actually fired an RPG through our supply room. The supply guy officer, he ducked and it went out the back door. It was amazing.
Oh, Fred Abate Marco, I tried to get Sam, her Sam Christie, her microphone's not working. I think that's the issue. She unmuted and it still wasn't working. So that's the only, I'm not muting Sam. I wanted to get her story. Stephen, Greg.
Yeah, at Khartoum, it was the 57th Assault Helicopter Company, which the call sign was Gladiators and the gunships were the Cougars.
Okay, heard of them. Yep, sure did.
Yeah, and yes, Khartoum was not a good place. It was a beautiful, beautiful area, but it was there were a lot of guys who were trying to kill us.
You were too close to the Ho Chi Minh Trail. That Ho Chi Minh Trail came in right around there, and that and Tay Din, and that was a pretty busy place for them.
Yeah, we know it very well because our organization supported SOG missions into Laos and Cambodia.
Yeah, that's another story, Todd. We weren't allowed to shoot into Tay Din and or shoot into Cambodia from where we were, and we watched people get picked up by enemy soldiers right across the border, clear as day, and we had a Cobra on standby and couldn't get them, and that was just the politics of that war.
Yep.
Really not good.
Greg Yost, I'm going to give you the last word tonight.
Todd, I think I had pretty much just left my hand up from the last time, but maybe I'll ask a question that I think I know the answer to, and maybe it's a great place to end it. For all the people who were there during Tet, before, during, and after, does anyone think that things ever return to normal after Tet? I think I know the answer to that question, but maybe I guess I will assume that they never return to normal unless anyone sort of wants to raise some sort of contrarian objection to that. Did Tet just basically change things, that things never got back to where they were?
Correct. That's how I would answer it as a historian. That's my understanding from doing 15 years of talking with veterans and talking with, thousands, I guess, of Vietnam veterans, doing a lot of reading. You could really divide the Vietnam generation and also, I think, the Vietnam War by Tet. The veterans who served before Tet are distinctly different from the veterans who served after Tet. You could really tell. One of the key changes is that the death rate, the casualty rates among American service members went way up after Tet and stayed up. I mean, the deadliest year of the Vietnam War was 1969. And also the largest number of service members serving in Vietnam was 1969. So the war very, very much intensified. And at the same time that public opinion in the US against the war also intensified, it was a toxic combination. Toxic, I think, for those especially who served in Vietnam after 1968. What a wonderful conversation tonight. What an education all of you gave us. Please do stay in touch. You can connect to me at veteransbreakfastclub.org. And again, I'm Todd, TODD, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. If you don't get our emails, if you don't get our schedule, please do let me know, and I'll make sure you get them, because I'd love to meet you all again and see you all again on here. Hey, everybody, Have a healthy, safe night. Take care, and I hope to see you next week. I salute you guys. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.